G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Christie David, and I also run a mortgage broking business called Atelier Wealth. But that's not why we're here. Why we're here is because each and every episode we bring in someone that I call best in breed. So what that means is this is someone who has made property their life, that has done very well, but also is very keen to give back their knowledge, their expertise as well to people that want to take this information and do something with it. And that's what I call the ambitious, but sometimes frustrated property investor, which is why we want to take a lot of these frequently asked questions that we get from our clients and hopefully share this knowledge and experience with you as well. So when I say best in breed, we talk about bringing people in that have really good pedigree, really good knowledge. And today's guest ticks all those boxes and more. Welcome to the show, Rob Flux from Property Developer Network. G'day, Rob.
Hey, Aaron, how are you, mate?
I'm fantastic, thanks. I got told before, am I dressed for winter or am I dressed for spring? And I said, look, it's a combination of both because we're right on the cusp of seasons at the moment. And
yeah, I'm one who struggles badly with the cold, mate. I grew up in the tropics, and so anything below 25 degrees is freezing.
There you go. You're still haven't acclimatized. I struggled this winter. It's been a long, harsh winter, and I think we're in for more rain this summer. But anyway, hopefully get more sun. But Rob, we've got a mutual client in common, which is how our paths have crossed. But digging up a little bit at your business and about yourself, I'm blown away by how much you've done and achieved, Rob. So Property Developer Network is what you've founded and own, which is a network of developers, newer developers coming in or renovators. I believe you've got a community of over 15,000 at the moment.
16,500 now, yeah. And we're starting to get exponential growth, which is a little scary. And we just hit our 10th birthday literally last weekend.
Mate, congratulations. I mean, 10 years in business is definitely a milestone, isn't it? Like you've obviously passed I look at business, you got 1 year, 3 year, 5 year mark, and then that 10 year mark, you look at the statistics around it. I think only 1 out of 10 businesses will be there at 10 years. And then the level of profitability for those businesses is another factor. So credit to you guys and to your team. I think there's something in there when I see businesses get to 10 years and they're experiencing rapid growth. It means it really struck a chord, and that's what we want to have a chat about. So when we had a chat before, and you talked about your roots starting with 5 mates around your kitchen table and how that's grown and what that's looked like and the different iterations that your business has gone through and the different strings you now add to your bow. Mate, I've got to say, it's a genuine respect that I have for what you've done, but I don't think you're here for admiration. You're here to give back and help more people become.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So respect goes to the side because that can come and go, but it's, I think, heart-centered and purpose-driven type businesses. We really want to help families set themselves free, because I know what that feels like, for example, for yourself. And look, I want other people to experience this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to that accord, I've set myself a personal goal of setting 1,000 people financially free.
Unreal.
And I guess today is my little part in trying to get somebody to get into the journey or get onto the journey and get off that treadmill, mate.
That's it. 1,000 starts with one. And that's the same notion that we had when we started going. We want to go this big goal, but you start with one person and that domino effect and starts to build. But Rob, I'd love to hear from yourself. And it's what I call the 3 Ps. A little bit about yourself personally, a bit about yourself professionally, a bit about your own property journey in a nutshell, if you can share with us.
Personally about myself, there's 2 sides to me. Everyone sees the public persona where I'm I guess, professional and doing the right thing and paying it forward and that sort of thing. But behind the scenes, mate, I'm a bit of a rat bag. I'm a reformed hoodlum. Used to have a mullet way back in the day.
There you go.
So I guess very much a petrol head. Very much love rugby. Love things where I can actually go out and experience life. So I'm an adrenaline junkie. The number of things that I have done that would scare the willies out of most people. And I would say if you name an adrenaline sport, there's an 80% chance I've done it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Love it. Get the blood flowing.
Get the blood flowing. So I don't want to ever leave the planet with any regrets that I didn't try something, mate.
Oh, well said. Well said.
Yes. So, and then a little bit about me from a professional side of things. I've got a two-stage journey in my property life. I did 20 years of traditional buy and hold investing, buy negative gear, hold, have all the issues and challenges with not being able to get deposits for the next property and not being able to service the next loan. And that works, and it worked really well for me. I got to the point where at the age of 38, I bought my first house at 18, first investment property at 21. So at 38, mathematically, I could have retired, but got divorced at 37. And so the second time round, I didn't want to wait 20 years and I didn't want the market to be in control of me. And that's when I went on my property development journey. And the second time round, I got out in 6 years. And if I had to do it again, I think I could probably do it in 3.
Wow. It's, I want to have a chat about that a little bit more because looking back, I mean, you said you did very well with buy and hold. Did buy and hold get you to a certain point? For example, like if you, and I mean, it got you to a stage you had the means to then do development work. Is that part of your journey?
I'm going to say what it did is it set me up for success, absolutely. But I guess going through the divorce and giving a lot of that away, I went back to where most people, I won't say where they start, but probably a little bit better than that. But where most people want to get to, maybe in 10 or 15 years' time. So I had a good a restart in that second phase, but it wasn't fantastic. So I had lots of challenges with regards to serviceability, and you go into commercial loans when you do property development, and the way that commercial loans are assessed are very different. So I think where it helped me is that I brought the investment mindset to development, because most developers think about rolling their stock over and selling and cashing in. Yeah. Whereas I'm looking at how do I retain stock and how do I keep the cash flow from that? And it's really applying that second half to the complex, to the process, that I've come up with a little bit of a process that I think allows us to manufacture the profit and create a passive cash flow and build net wealth, so you can do a little bit of work and a little bit of let the market do the work.
Hearing that, it almost feels like you struck the trifecta, because I feel like what a lot of clients will struggle with, it's very binary, the decision. Do you buy and hold or do you buy and sell? But I feel like you've almost kind of played in a grey area there, which is, hey, look, I've almost cracked the code here to say, look, here's how you can, because you're right, borrowing capacity becomes a challenge, or it's equity, trying to find enough equity release to then get the funds to then go again, right? Which is, I generally say, they're the two issues that hold investors back. Yeah.
So let's have a look at that. And it is kind of binary, like you said, but I think a lot of people are a little bit too eager to hold too early in the development phase. And, they manufacture some profit and they want to retain it, but they've still got a lot of residual debt. What that does is it creates this glass ceiling, and anything that you have manufactured gets trapped in the property, and so it gets quite tricky. We want to get to the point where we've manufactured enough profit that the residual debt is so low that actually holding that no longer is a burden to us, but actually becomes a benefit to us, and that's the key. And it's actually not as hard as it sounds to actually get there. It's something that's daunting when you first look at it, but when you look at the mechanics that sit behind it, it's actually a relatively easy task to achieve.
Okay. You mentioned about, you call it glass ceiling, for example. You need to break through those borrowing capacity ceilings and those limits. And sometimes the goalpost can move bank to bank, for example. So, there's a level of fluidity you need to have in your strategy, for example. But where have you seen investors make those errors, for example, and then how do they overcome that, and then how do they navigate borrowing capacity changes, or trying to free up cash flow, for example, as well?
I think the biggest problem is when investors transition to development and they bring the investment mindset from a lending perspective across with them, because development lending and development finance is very, very different. If you look at an investment point of view, the bank is looking at a 20 or 30-year hold type scenario. And so they're assessing you on, look, have you got enough equity for the 20% deposit? Or you could go lower if you want to take those sorts of punts. And can you service the debt given that the bank has to predict, well, what's the market going to do in the next 20 years? What's interest rates going to do? So there's some pretty heavy criteria that they assess you against.
Yeah.
In the property development world, they're taking a much shorter view of things. They're looking at, well, what is happening for the duration of your project only, and is the project itself profitable? So they're less concerned about you, the individual, other than have you got the experience to execute the project? And they're more looking at the deal. Does the deal make sense? Now, if the deal makes sense, the borrowing capacity doesn't matter. They will lend you the money so long as they've got the equity in order to secure their position. And so the glass ceiling of borrowing capacity disappears. Okay. And the limit that stops you from scaling in the development world is, have you got the equity? So in investment terms, in the investment world, we call that the deposit. In commercial world, we call that equity. And so commercial terms, they tend to want 30 or even 40% equity in the deal. And so that becomes our glass ceiling. And so then it starts to become, how do I get creative? So my lack of resources should not stop me from being resourceful. It's not what do I need, but how do I achieve it? And so there's lots of ways where you can do very, very creative acquisition models that will either defer or sometimes even avoid many of the costs that go into the process, that then improve your cash flow and improve the profitability. And because it's a short-term duration, lots of people actually want to get involved and actually lend you money to actually help you through that journey.
Righto. Yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate that, and I feel like we've jumped ahead a step, because one of the things that when we've spoken about is there's the strategy, and there's really, I guess, 4 key ways that an investor comes in, called capital growth, which you just spoke about, cash flow, manufacturing your equity and profit, and then investing for lifestyle. Now, do you feel there's been like an order and sequence for people to follow? Do you feel like, hey, look, when people come to you, they're thinking one thing, but they're actually meaning another? So what I mean by that is, people think that they want to go ahead and buy more investment properties, but they're saying, look, I want the cash flow to be the priority. But it's like, actually, to springboard and build your portfolio, you need the capital growth, because that's where the equity is going to come from. And then you're sifting between what they're actually saying, but what they actually mean is something else. Yeah,
you're right with those 4 different models of why you buy a property. And I think the big challenge that a lot of people do is they don't really think about, what is the actual purpose that I'm trying to grow here. You want to go through a capital growth phase at some point in your journey. Then you want to convert that over into a cash flow phase, because you can't eat your assets, right? So what you need is cash on the table. You need to be able to put fuel in the car and food on the table and send the kids to school. All those sorts of things cost money. So you've got to there's a transition where you're actually going to do that. The third one that you touched on was manufactured profit. And manufactured profit allows us to manufacture that capital growth in a very aggressive timeline. And if we manufacture enough capital growth, it has the double whammy of saying, well, the property now becomes positive geared, and so we get the cash flow as well. And I think that's the primary difference. But when you're thinking about which approach you're taking, every strategy works. If you want capital growth, that works. If you want cash flow, that works. If you want manufactured profit, that works. But they don't work everywhere. Yeah. And I think what people are trying to do is they pick the area, then they try to force their strategy onto the area. Whereas it needs to go the other way around. You need to choose your strategy and then say, well, where does that actually start to work? Yeah. There's a whole bunch of where's the hotspot, Rob? And I get that question all the time, right? Where's the hotspot?
If you had $1 every time someone asks you for a hotspot, you probably were retired. I'm assuming, right?
So the beauty of this, Aaron, is there are millions of hotspots. Yeah. But let's take a look at that. So a hotspot for capital growth is going to be very different to a hotspot for cash flow, which is going to be different to a hotspot for building a duplex, which is going to be different to a hotspot for building a 6-pack of townhouses, which is going to be different to building a 20-lot land subdivision. Yeah. Right. So there's hundreds of hotspots. The thing is, what are you doing now? Where does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks very much. And so when someone may come to you and say, look, Rob, I've got this idea. And again, you've got years under your belt. You've probably been this way personally and wired this way as well, going, it's a confirmation bias, or it's like, I think this is all the hallmarks for like a really good development. And then so you're going, well, hang on, let's go back a step and go through your strategy. What are you looking to achieve? Then the next step really is around, well, how do you pull the trigger on this? And what I mean by that is it's all new territory. So someone, let's say a client, for example, got a family, they've got their own home, maybe they've got a couple of investment properties, but now it's moving to the development stage, which is all new territory for them. And they go, look, I just don't have the expertise, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the contacts, and I can make some very, very expensive mistakes. It can be a learning curve. It can also be a very expensive learning curve, but you can also make plenty of mistakes. And you just go, look, the benefit of hindsight, you chalk it down to learning, but you could also have avoided that by partnering with someone or tapping into some knowledge or some resources. So how has your community been able to leverage knowledge, leverage insights, but also most importantly, networks as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, really good points there, Aaron. I'll give firstly a quote from Warren Buffett. He says that risk only comes from not knowing what you're doing. So that's the first part to that. And the metaphor that is really easy for people to understand is when you're a child, you're taught that crossing the road is dangerous. And you're taught if you look left and you look right and you look left again, you can navigate that. Now, the risk hasn't changed, but you've now got a risk management plan. You've identified the problem. You've got a risk management plan. You know you can cross at the crosswalk. You can press the little button and go wait for the green man, or you can do the left, right, left thing. The same comes with property development. You need to learn how to identify the risk. You need to identify how to manage it. The risk will never disappear. The car is still dangerous. But by having that management plan in place, you're going to minimize that risk as much as possible. And I think people misunderstand the impact that actually has, and they don't give enough due credit to actually educating themselves before pulling the trigger. So they are convinced by a real estate agent that this property has all this development potential, it must be profitable. The reality is that 90% of development sites are not profitable. So it's 90. Wow. And so just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. And we need to treat property development just like any other career. We need to actually go through our apprenticeship. We need to actually learn the process. We're not going to become a doctor first go. What we have to do is actually go to university and actually study that and get prepared. And then we're happy to pick up the scalpel and do whatever it is that we need to do.
And I think, I wouldn't say a lot of people, it's a very harsh, broad brush statement, but there's the odd case study where it's like they just got rich accidentally. They were sitting on a beautiful site and now anyone thinks that, if I've got a big site, for example, this many square meter frontage, that's the license to go and build a duplex, for example, because I've seen them do it. And I guess it doesn't really have that same level of expertise you may attach to a profession. It's going, well, it could be a lucky element to it. It could be, bought in the right place at the right time, for example. And so nobody really associates property development with a profession to then, like exactly what you're saying, which is do your learning phase, put your L plates on, then your P plates, and then you can go off and do the big boy stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have witnessed many, many people make a lot more money than me by sheer luck. And I've been working very hard.
You didn't buy Bitcoin, Rob?
No, but I can sleep at night, Aaron. So I know that the effort that I'm putting in is mitigating that risk. And I know that the probability of my success is extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
And whereas I guess the person who does it by blind luck, they've got no idea why it actually happened. If they try to duplicate that, they can't. So I can cookie cutter what I'm doing and be very comfortable that my risk factor is quite low. So, I talked about being an adrenaline junkie before. Taking risk is something that I'm okay doing, but it's calculated risk. And that's the key. You actually put the effort in, you put the calculated risk, and then that risk factor drops massively. And then what you're having is just an experience.
So take me through, and I want to be very, very clear. This isn't a plug for your business, but take me through when someone comes to yourself or your team, Rob, and they're going, hey, look, I've got an idea, I've got a bit of a game plan strategy. How do they tap into the knowledge? How do they tap into the community? How do they tap into the resources, for example, and go on that learning journey? Because that's effectively what you're really big on, which is knowledge, education, teamwork, and community. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, I guess, our environment is very much an immersive experience. Everybody learns very differently. So some people learn by doing, some people learn by watching. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to create a community where everyone is supportive of each other. It's a pay it forward type approach. Help someone else, and then when your turn is there, then people will want to help you, not hurt you. Freudian slip there. And so coming to our monthly meetups is probably a great place to start. We've been running those for 10 years. We run them in 3 different locations. It's not formal education, but what it is we have industry experts who come in every single month talking about the different issues and challenges in the industry. So town planners, accountants, lawyers, civil engineers, architects, all the different people you're going to need in your team. They all come and say, look, these are the common challenges that we see, or this is what's happening in the market right now. We then have somebody in our community share what is called a real deal. Now, a real deal is exactly that. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly of a project. And the whole idea there is that as property developers, we make money by solving problems. And so it's really important that we're exposed to the problem, see that it can actually be overcome, that there is a little bit of an emotional roller coaster that is actually part of that. But by sharing that experience, everybody learns, and we are going to grow from the blood, sweat, and tears of the person standing at the front of the room. So we've been sharing those real deals for 10 years. Every weekend, all the way around the country, 10 years worth of people actually getting success. And there are times when people go close to losing money. There are times where people have lost money, but they actually share that experience so that the next person doesn't need to. So it's not just the glory, mate. It's it's about genuine learning. And then lastly, we try to do a masterminding process where we help each other's property journey move forward.
It's excellent. I love that. And that's the power of peer-to-peer learning. Right? You mentioned it's not formal education or formal training. That's the beauty of having people that are living, breathing, but also skin in the game. Like they're doing it for themselves. Something you just mentioned there is, we can learn from, success leaves clues, but also I've made these mistakes and they've cost me a lot. So avoid these mistakes. And they're almost blind spots that people may have, and they wouldn't have known it till someone shared.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where I could have lost money or sent me back.
So while that's not a formal path, I guess what it is creating that herd that is going to be supportive and doing all the things that you want to do in that community that you're looking for. And from there, that's going to determine, do you actually want to go down this path? You're going to get exposed to it and immersed in it and you go, is this something that is right for me? It's a place where people go, okay, I think if I want to do this, this is the strategy that I want to do. At that point, people then go, okay, I'm actually going to go do some formal education. Yeah. And there are lots of different development paths. And so my guidance is don't listen to the spruiker at the front of the room telling you that theirs is the only way. Because what will happen is if it's the strategy that you want to do, you'll find that education very informative and very helpful. But if it's not the strategy you want to do, you've just burnt your cash. And so choose the strategy first, then find who's the educator who's teaching that particular thing. And then every time you actually go and do some education, it's going to actually push you towards your goal.
And when it comes to levels of support, so you mentioned there's ways to learn from each other, but then there's ways to then tap into people that maybe have the cash, because sometimes that's the other part. Generally, our younger investors, they're not earning as much as maybe when they get later in life. That earning trajectory just isn't there. So you've got the means and the want, but you necessarily don't have. Well, you got the want, but you don't necessarily have the means because you don't have the cash or the borrowing capacity. So partnerships, how does that work? And I guess what does someone got to be careful when they go into like a partnership on a development project as well?
So partnerships or joint ventures are very, very common in our community. Yeah. There's 7 different ways that you can actually make money from property when you have little to no money to start with.
Okay.
And so this is something that investing can't do. You must have a deposit. You must have serviceability. But in the property development world, because you're manufacturing the profit, then there's lots of ways that people want to get involved so they actually share the profit with you. And that's the difference. So there's you can actually make a bucket load of money when you've got almost none to start with. And we've got a multitude of examples of that. If you come and look at some of the real deals in our community, we've got a gazillion of those where people have manufactured profit out of thin air because they had nothing. Because if the deal is good enough, the money will come. So a really simple, easy example. And as I said, there's 7 different ways of actually doing this. But let's just imagine there's a $1 million property, and the project is going to take 12 months to run. So I could give that person $1 million today, and I would have to pay stamp duty today. I'd have to pay land tax for the year. I'd have to pay interest rates for the year. I'd have to pay rates to the council. There's a whole bunch of holding costs where that cash flow is going to hurt.
Yeah.
Or I could calculate what those costs are and have a look at the vendor's needs at the point in time and say, well, what if I didn't give that to the Commonwealth Bank? And what if I didn't give that to the Office of State Revenue? What if I didn't give it to the City Council? What if I instead, if you can defer your gratification for payment of the purchase of the property, what if I paid you at the end from the sale of the finished product? I could give you all those savings back.
Wow.
So, the interest rate, give that. But so now it's depending upon the interest rate that you're doing. So in our commercial world, sometimes we're paying 8, 10, 15% interest rates sometimes. But if let's be conservative and just say 5% interest, okay? So it's $50,000 extra that we could give them at the end. Land tax is probably 15. That's another 15K. Rates is probably 15. So we're pretty quickly ratcheting to say, I could give that person 1.1 million, give or take, at the end of the 12 months if they waited. In the meantime, I didn't go get a bank loan.
Yeah.
I didn't go get a credit reference check. I didn't have to cash flow the serviceability. And what I've done is I've shared in the profits of the project with the vendor actually selling me the property in the first place.
Wow.
Right? Now, if your project only takes 12 months, you might be able to sell the finished product before you actually own the first product, and you can use the income from the finished product to actually pay for the purchase of the original. Now, that's one of 7 different creative ways that you can manufacture money out of thin air.
That's one of we go to get you back on for the other 6, I think. and that's exactly what we want to explore, which is, I think that's an extractive type strategy, which is not, if you weren't exposed to it, if you didn't know about it, the normal process is buy the property, then you're saying incur all the costs, hold it, and then complete the project. Whereas if you can think differently, if you can be flexible with timeframes, for example, as well, and you're opening to it, and it's what I call a win-win, because often we're thinking, I want the property, but I want the best price, and that's a lose for the vendor. If we're thinking win-win, for example, that's a different outcome as well, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is that we've been indoctrinated by society, and I'm going to pick on real estate agents here in particular, that it must be an unconditional type sale and it must settle in 30 days, and you must come up with your 10% deposit and all those sorts. So we go in with this preconceived idea that is the solution. Instead, what we want to do is actually understand the needs of the vendor selling the property. Why are they selling it in the first place? Okay. In many instances, this is their one and only nest egg. This is their one chance to cash in. And baby boomers had the dream of the big backyard. All these people, the baby boomers didn't necessarily have a superannuation fund. They don't have a lot of money for retirement. Because it's their principal place of residence, this is their one chance to cash in, capital gains tax free. And so if we can find a way to give them a little bit more, that helps them, like you said, make it win-win, but it also helps us. Now, if a real estate agent's involved, their need is very different to the vendor's need. The real estate agent's need is, well, I want to guarantee I'll get my my commission, and I want that in my pocket as soon as humanly possible so I can move on.
And also, they're measured on that sale. So it's like that house price sale then sets either a standard or, how quickly that property sold. Like their metrics and KPIs are very different.
Absolutely.
On market, don't want to lower, below a median house price, for example. So they don't want a bad sale on their record. And the vendor.
So how do we make it not win-win, but how do we make it win-win-win?
Absolutely.
Because as soon as an agent is involved, you're actually negotiating with 3 people, not with 2.
Spot on.
Okay. So if you want to make it win-win-win, the first thing you need to do is actually make sure that the agent is looked after in the transaction.
Yeah.
Okay. Agent, their motivation is to have certainty on the sale, and their motivation is to get the cash as soon as humanly possible from their commission. So let's work on that. And you say, okay, well, hey, Mr. Agent or Mrs. Agent or whoever you are, if I could give you certainty on your commission and if I could get you that cash early, would you allow me the flexibility to negotiate a really creative solution where I can pay more for the property? Your commission will actually be higher, but I'll make sure you get that early. So when I pay for the deposit, there's no point a deposit sitting in a trust account for 12 months and being trapped. What if I released the deposit early through to the vendor? The vendor could then pay the agent's commission early. Now, I had to put the deposit in the trust account anyway. Now it's just me thinking a little bit creatively and say, well, let's let that out. Let's give the vendor a little bit of taste of the cash.
Yeah. Give
the agent a little bit of taste of the cash. The agent all of a sudden is getting paid on that 1.1 million commission, not the 1. That's helped their reputation, like you just touched on before. They got this massive sale price. They can actually refer to that. And so everybody's happy. But you need to get through the gatekeeper. The agent is the gatekeeper. If you can get through the gatekeeper, then you can actually get through to the vendor.
Nice. Well put. And that's, again, years of experience in buying versus I need to win at all costs to the detriment of others, isn't it? And so that's a way to think bigger. Love it. Rob, really appreciate it. So take me through. So who is an ideal person that could come into the community, maybe check out one of your meetups, for example, want to find out more information about yourself and your team? Take us through that.
I'm going to say someone who's typically either attempted the longer-term buy and hold investment strategy and found that either it's too slow for them, or alternatively, they keep hitting glass ceilings with regards to, look, I can't get the deposit for the next one, or I can't get the serviceability for the next one. Yeah. And they feel trapped. They feel that, look, I've only got 15, 20, maybe 30 years left of working life. Yeah. At the rate that I'm going, I'm not going to make it. So what can I do to think differently and actually accelerate? Now, property development is an active sport. You need to actually learn, you need to do. And so it's really someone that is genuinely committed to wanting to actually learn that process. Yeah. If you're just a set and forget kind of person, property development isn't for you. But if you're willing to put the hard yards in, then absolutely there's quite a few steps to the process. But when you do, the rewards are very worthwhile.
I really appreciate it, Rob. Really appreciate it. If you want to reach out to Rob and his team, we'll include the details for their website, their links to their community as well. And like we always say to everyone, you do your due diligence on who you want as part of your team, maybe a mentor, for example, or a coach, that type of capacity. But what Rob said there is exactly right. What type of goal are you looking to achieve, and how do you align with someone that's probably been there, done that, and that can set you on that blueprint as well? And it's what I'd call no difference like a personal trainer. If I'm trying to get lean for a marathon, I'm not going to someone that's going to help me put on weight for a bodybuilding competition, right? You choose your trainer aligned to your goals, and you choose your team that's going to help you get there as well. So Rob, really appreciate that. That's
perfectly fine, mate. And you touched on two words there that I think a lot of people confuse. So the difference between a coach and a mentor. So coach is very much about mindset. Okay, that is getting you to take action. Okay, so they're not necessarily have actually done the thing that you want to do, but they're really good at actually rummaging around inside your brain and go, well, what's stopping you from actually taking the action that you need to take? Sometimes it's limiting belief. Sometimes it's fear of failure. Sometimes it's fear of success. Like, there's all sorts of things where a coach will actually help you to motivate to take action.
Yeah.
A mentor is someone with runs on the board, someone with skills, someone with experience. Mentor will, when you take the action, they're the ones that are going to make sure it's the right action. Yeah. And I think a lot of people confuse the two. They try to get someone called a coach who's not really a mentor, who's, you want to be able to separate that. I think that's the primary difference in our formal education process for anyone that comes down that path. We have a genuine qualified life coach. We have multiple mentors with lots of runs on the board. And so it's about separating those two out and understanding what is the thing that's stopping you. Is it the skills or is it the actual motivation to pull the trigger?
Spot on. I'm glad we've ended on that note, Rob, because we did an episode recently, someone like Keith Abrahams, and exactly that, high performance habits. Quite often, it's what goes on between your ears that's stopping people from taking action. It's like, well, how do some people, like you're saying, maybe not as smart as others, but have pulled the trigger and made more money? And you're sitting there scratching your head going, how have they done it? I have the means, or maybe I've got the ability, but they've just been able to go ahead and pull the trigger. And that's sometimes taking action. You need someone that's just going to give you that nudge, give you that push, give you that kind of lift upwards to go, you can do this. And what's the worst that happens?
If you want a life hack on how to do that, I can leave everyone with a little life hack.
No.
We all set these massive goals with where we want to be in the future. I want 6-pack abs, right? And it's so far away because my beer gut's getting in the way, and because it's so far away, it becomes unbelievable. And because it becomes unbelievable, we'll start, but then we go, it's too hard, and I give up. I'm going to flip it on its head. I'm going to say, do micro commitments.
Yeah.
I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to put my gym shoes on. Now, you put your gym shoes on and then you're sitting on the end of the bed going, what am I doing with these? So now you'll walk to the end of the street.
Yeah.
Okay. And then tomorrow you say, well, I'll walk to the end of the street. And you get to the end of the street and you go, well, that was easy. Now I'll keep walking, to the end around the block. And if you do micro commitments, it's a lot more believable, a lot more achievable. You can pat yourself on the back and reward yourself for actually achieving a lot more. You still want those bigger, heftier goals, but they're more milestones along the way, as opposed to destinations that you're actually aiming for.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Thank you very much, Rob. Really appreciate that and your thoughts and knowledge, but also thanks for your time and putting yourself out there to join us as well. That's been a pleasure having a chat with Rob. Like I said, we'll include the details for his team, his business. If you do want to reach out, by all means, please do that. And I look forward to bringing you another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast very soon. Until next time, take care. I'm your host, Aaron Christie David. Please leave us a review, or if you've got some questions, drop us a line as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Aaron. See you guys.
Bye.